started eating our supplies. There's more in the...
I won't need more than that.
This is just the only one. All right, you ready, Tony?
I'm ready.
Okay, the first one to get 3, all right? Ready? Go.
Crap.
Oh, so close. That was like cheating. Can I get my second one?
Done.
Oh, good job.
All right.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Jenna. Welcome to Belin Youth Group at Home edition. I am so glad you are joining us. We are about to kick off a series called Popular, and I have a question for you. I want to know who you think the most famous person in the world is. What about the most famous athlete? Musician? So, who do you think is the most famous? Well, you see, the interesting thing about fame is if I listened to your answers, it would probably be varying. If I asked you who the most famous sports person is, it would probably have to do with what you think the most prominent sport is, or who your favorite sports person is. And it would also have to do with what country you might be from, right? So, you know, based on what is important to you, would vary your answers. Now, other things may be popular, other people may be popular, but they might not matter to you. And that's because they don't have a lot of influence over your life. What do I mean by that? Well, influence is the ability to have an effect on someone else. It's the ability to affect someone else's behaviors and thoughts and choices. And while we may not agree on who's popular in our world, I think we can definitely agree on one thing. Popular people have influence. They have people's attention, and what they say and what they do matters to people around them. And their popularity gives them this ability to lead or influence other people and change something about themselves to influence and mold them. So, for example, when I was in middle school, the popular things were skate brands, boy bands, and girl power, right? So I could tell you everyone wanted to dance like Britney Spears. When I was in middle school, people knew Spice Girls, and I would attribute my ability to sing harmony to the Backstreet Boys. They had an influence on me. I definitely listened to them when I was in middle school. So they had an influence in my upbringing, right? And the people around me. So here's the thing, this idea of influence. Some of us wonder if we have any of it. We can definitely tell that famous people carry influence, but what about us? And I think we easily associate it with famous people, but we all have a power to influence. Maybe you wonder, you know, how much influence you could really have. Like, you don't have it all together and you don't really know what you have to offer. Like, you don't really have everything figured out. And even if you do have influence, what are you supposed to do with it? And what direction are you supposed to be pointing other people to? And in middle school and high school, how do you even know how to use whatever influence you may have? Or maybe you recognize you have influence, but you struggle with this fear of failure, this fear of stepping out in a lead, of messing up, and everyone noticing that you really botched something, right? Or maybe you feel like, you know what? That idea of influencing people, that is just too much pressure. You see, other people around you have a lot of influence or are stepping out into lead, and honestly, if you just looks like a lot of work, and their influence comes with so much pressure and so much attention, and you don't want to sign up for any of that. And then there's those of you who really have never really thought about it. You see this whole influence thing, and you'll see like influencers on YouTube and Instagram, and it never really occurred to you that you have the power to influence or to lead others too. here's the point. We seem to see influence as this big, unattainable thing that we can't seem to reach. It's something that we can't reach for ourselves, and we're quick to recognize the influence that famous people or other important people seem to have, but we end up missing the potential that we might have to influence others. See, the thing is, this whole idea of whether or not we can influence other people around us, this isn't a new idea. This is definitely something that's been around a long time. People for generations and generations have been trying to influence other people for positive and negative, right? And so we're going to look at the Bible today at a guy named Jesus, and you may have heard of him because he was somebody who had a lot of influence. And we're going to look in the book of John. And John was an amazing guy. He was one of the people who followed Jesus, and he saw Jesus firsthand. He was there to witness these accounts, and he told these stories, and he wrote them down so that we would be able to hear. And we're going to look at a story of Jesus when he's at one of the most influential moments of his ministry. And think about this amazing time when he was speaking to thousands of people. Now, I don't know how many people you've gotten up and spoke in front of, or how many people follow you on TikTok or Instagram, but Jesus, in a time of no technology, was followed by thousands of people because they were hanging on every word to hear what he had to say. So Jesus' influence was growing, and there was a massive crowd following him, and he was teaching people, and people flocked to him, and he was teaching. And then at this point where we pick up the story, Jesus is focused on feeding this massive crowd. Now, I don't know how many people you've fed before, but in this account, there's 5,000 men, and that does not even account for the women and children that were present. So there's tons of people. And so let's see what this story says. Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd? Tell everyone to sit down, Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered 5,000 from the book of John. So there's this boy, and he has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. For us, we're using Swedish fish because they're the best kinds of fish. I actually don't eat seafood. I know, I grew up at the beach myself. You can judge me for that later. Fish is good for you. You should eat that though. Yes. So, and these fancy bread, this is donut holes. So now I have before you bread and fish, and I don't even know if this is enough to feed anyone who comes to youth group. I would be looking for a couple more Swedish fish, but this is what the boy had for representation's sake, right? So in the crowd there was a young boy who had packed dinner. The only problem, the kid only packed a few loaves of bread and some fish, right? He didn't come prepared to feed thousands. He just came with what little he had for himself. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. So the disciples took this young boy's food, 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, and he decided that they would give it over to Jesus, right? And they gave it to Jesus, and Jesus prayed over it and started handing it out. Now, if I was this kid, I'd probably be pretty nervous because not only did Jesus just take my dinner, but he expects it to feed and help all of these people, right? He didn't have much to offer. He just had his dinner, and that was it. But still, this kid let Jesus use whatever he had. And what happened? Jesus just kept passing and passing and passing it around until there was not just enough, there was an abundance left over that everyone was fed. Now, there's so many amazing things about this story, but I want to zoom in on just one part. Jesus could have fed this huge crowd in any numbers of ways. Jesus could have just had fish crawling out of the sea towards them. Jesus could have made fish fall from the sky. I mean, he's Jesus. He could do anything. But what's amazing about this story is that Jesus chooses to use this young boy. And he chooses to use the little that he has and make abundance come out of it. He didn't have to do it this way, but this is how Jesus did it. Jesus saw that this boy had something to give, and Jesus chose to use it to make an impact. By doing that, Jesus made this boy's dinner into so much more. Take a look at how this passage ends. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet we have been expecting." The people saw what Jesus did with what the kid brought. And because of it, they started to believe in him. Could Jesus have done this all without that boy's help? Of course he could. But he chose to use someone who was willing to give what they had, no matter how little it might have seemed. This kid, he wasn't super important or influential. He didn't show up trying to be a somebody. The people there may not have even known his name. He just was a kid who showed up, who listened to what Jesus had to say, and he had packed himself some dinner, and it wasn't much, but he offered it. And what's amazing to me is that Jesus allowed him to be part of this amazing miracle, this incredible story that helped other people see Jesus for who he was. Because just like this boy, Jesus can use whatever you have to do big things. And I don't know about you, if you've seen the power that a small gesture or a small word of encouragement can help put somebody off on a better path or a better way. And maybe it's happened to you in turn. A few weeks ago, I sent a friend of mine a text and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about you, and I want you to know that I really care about you, and I'm praying for you." And it was amazing to me that 2 weeks later, I heard about how important that was for them in helping them get through the day they were having. We just don't always know what our small offerings can do and what a great big impact they can have, because the thing is that it wasn't about them being influential. It was about Jesus using us to do great things. As we learn from the boy in the story, you don't have to be crazy famous or have 1,000 Instagram followers or go viral on TikTok in order for people to be able to be impacted by what you do or say. So you simply have to be willing to let Jesus use what you have. You have to be willing to give whatever you've got for the good of others. If you come to the table with that, I promise Jesus will use your influence to impact people around you in the best ways. Jesus can use whatever you have to do big things. And today I simply want you to start seeing that. For some of you, maybe the best thing you can do right now is to begin to recognize this influence that you have. Maybe you have influence over your family or your friend group, your teammates, maybe it's your younger brother or sister. Either way, it's influence and you have it. You don't have to influence thousands of people. It doesn't have to be dozens. If there's one person in your life that you can move towards a positive direction, that's influence. And if you're not sure who you might be able to influence in a positive way, talk to a mentor or a friend and see what that looks like in your life. And then be willing to do something with what you have to offer. Maybe you have an incredible gift of being able to be great at math, and you can help encourage those around you who are struggling with math. Maybe you can give an encouraging word to a teammate who is really doubting themselves. Maybe you can give a great laugh to your mom who may really need it, and you can brighten her day. Maybe you can be like the boy with the 2 fishes and the 5 loaves who did a small gesture and was able to help other people see Jesus through it. Think about it. We all have something to offer others, and that's influence. Jesus can use whatever you have to do big things. So as we read today in our scripture, just like Jesus turned a single meal into one that fed thousands, he can use whatever you have to make a difference. So as you go throughout the rest of your day, I'd love for you to think about what's one place that you have influence. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for Belin Youth at Home edition. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you soon. Yes.